Okay, chapter 8, class, has to do with knowing your vehicle. And of course, the first thing they mentioned there on page 1 of chapter 8 is knowing the controls of your vehicle. And of course, the controls could be the gas pedal, the brake pedal, your signal lights, your wiper switch, your horn, the steering wheel, and those sorts of things are the controls of your vehicle. And they also mentioned the cockpit drill there. Whether you're a novice driver or merely driving a different car for the first time, you need to be familiar with the instruments, gauges, and controls of your vehicle. And as I mentioned earlier, I think, you may drive the same car for several years, and all of a sudden you get into another vehicle. The things may be the same, but they could be a little bit different. And we'll talk about those as we move along through this chapter 8 here. On page 2 there, chapter 8, they talk about the instrument panel. Some people may refer to it as the dash. The instrument panel is actually mounted in the dashboard, so some people will say the dash, my speedometer is in the dash of my car, but it's actually, technically, it's in the instrument panel of your vehicle. And they run down and give you a run it down there of all the features of the instrument panel there. At the bottom of page 2, the first thing they mention is the temperature gauge, which controls or governs the temperature of your engine. And of course, usually it would be a light today that will glow in your instrument panel if your engine, for example, is running too hot, as opposed to a gauge years ago. The most older cars had gauges, and the instrument panel had to go halfway across the dashboard to accommodate those huge gauges they put there. So to make it more compact today in later model cars, they just use, most cases, the little idiot light there, we call it. The tachometer indicates the engine's revolutions per minute. Most cars today oil around 850, 900 RPM, which means revolutions per minute, complete revolutions, 360 degrees, right? So if you see 900 on your instrument panel on the tachometer, you know that your engine is making 900 complete revolutions per minute there. Turn signals, of course, those that lever on the left side of your steering column, just underneath the steering wheel there, to change, to warn up your change of direction, right or left turns. The odometer displays the total mileage since the vehicle was manufactured. So if you were buying a used car, you would probably want to see, till you get in, turn on your key and see how much mileage or kilometers was on the vehicle. Is it 70,000 or is it 180,000, for example? So that's what the odometer would tell us there. High beam indicators, that little blue light in the center of the instrument panel, it tells us that our lights are on high range or high beam. The trip odometer displays mileage since it was reset to 0. And a nice little feature, if you're going on a trip and wondering how much driving you're going to do, you can zero it at your driveway, and when you get to your destination, you can look down and see, look, I've driven 918 kilometers, for example. Or you can wait to return home and look at it and see I've driven a total of just about 3,000 kilometers since I've left. So it's a nice little feature on your car. The speedometer, of course, is the main one that you have to be constantly viewing every 8 to 10 seconds, glance at it. Make sure you haven't drifted it up over the legal speed limit there. The fuel gauge, that will be a gauge, probably digital, or it may have a hand whereby it tells you how much fuel or gas is in your reservoir or your gas tank if you want. The oil pressure gauge, of course, indicates a problem with the oil pressure in your engine, and that's an immediate problem, class. If you see your oil pressure gauge glowing when you're driving on the highway, immediately get yourself safely first off the roadway, of course, and then turn off the engine, because what might only require a liter or so of oil, which is $4 or $5. So if you keep on driving, you're probably looking at a $5,000 or $6,000 engine. So that could be an immediate problem there, for sure. The battery alternator has to do with the charging system of your vehicle. Of course, that's what runs your power windows and your heater and your lights and your radio and your wipers and everything else electronically in the vehicle comes from the energy in your battery. So, the alternator has supplied the energy to your battery. Every time you turn on your lights, for example, or use your power windows, you rob a little bit of energy from your battery. So if there's nothing putting it back there, eventually everything will go out on you. You'll have no lights, they'll be very dim, your wipers won't work, or your heater or anything else. because usually the alternator is at fault. It's not putting back that energy that you're taking from your battery. So that's the job of the alternator, of course, to dump back the energy into your battery, keep it charged while you're driving and using those features of your vehicle. The power windows and the heater and the wipers and the headlights and the horn and that sort of thing. The airbag light there indicates the airbag readiness. Safety belt, of course, reminder for all occupants to fasten the safety belt. Could be a light or a chime depending on the model vehicle that you drive. So you start to go down the street and hear your bell dinging or whatever, a little chime ringing there. It's telling you, look, you know, you forgot to buckle your seat belt. So very important class, that little feature. Make sure you always buckle your seat belts before you set out. The selector lever indicates which gear has been selected by shifting the selector lever in the case of an automatic transmission. And in the case of a standard, you have an upshift light whereby it illuminates the warning driver to shift into higher vehicles. Newer models would have that. You wouldn't see that on older model cars. But on newer cars, they would have that feature for sure. Low engine oil fluid level indicates the engine oil levels too low and should be checked immediately. On newer cars, again, you will get a warning if your engine's oil pressure or the oil is low. It'll warn you, you'll see a light flash in your instrument panel. That warns you to say, look, you know, it's time I gotta top my engine's oil up or I'm gonna have a problem. So, but on older cars, that wouldn't be the thing, class. You would have to check it regularly, your oil level in your engine, just to make sure that you've got the correct amount of oil in it. But on newer cars, of course, the computer sort of helps us along a bit in those cases and warns us of things before it actually does any damage, which is nice features. The service engine soon light is not an immediate problem, class. The real answer to that would be get it serviced and checked in the near future. So if you're driving down the roadway somewhere and your service engine soon light glows in your instrument panel, it doesn't mean you got to pull off the road and call a tow truck. You know, do your errand, and when you come home, make an appointment with your dealer and have it checked, just in case. It might be only a sensor blown, and probably never ever do any damage to your engine or transmission or whatever. But, you know, once in a while it could cause your engine not to work properly. You know, it might be the purge valve, for example, and that's mechanical things in the engine. And your engine's not oiling like it should. And so, but it's not an immediate problem, unlike your oil pressure light or your engine's temperature light class. Those are immediate problems there. The anti-lock brake indicates the condition of the anti-lock brake system. Again, if that light comes on after you started your car and it's running for a few seconds, and you're driving down the roadway and your anti-lock brake light appears, you should have that checked. It might be just a sensor and your brakes might be as good as they ever were. But then again, it could be a problem with the brakes themselves. So you can't gamble with it because brakes are so much a part of safety with the vehicle. So you would have those checked immediately as well, that particular problem. So those are all in the instrument panel class, these warnings and so on. On page 4 there, you have the vehicle controls there. And the first thing it mentions the rheostat, and that's whereby you can dim the intensity of light in your instrument panel. If it's too bright, particularly on a dark country road or highway at night when there's areas not lighted around you, maybe sometimes these lights might be a bit too bright for some people with more sensitive eyes. So you can dim that light in your instrument panel to a more comfort level to your eyes, not to the point where you can't see your speedometer, but at least you can reduce the lighting to a more comfortable level there. And that's what the rheostat is for there. The multi-function lever, the one showing you there up at the top of page 4 to your upper right, turns and changes the signals to left for left or right turns, headlights and high-low beam changers. It does that as well. And your flash to pass, and that is whereby you pull it up toward the steering wheel. That lever is in your steering column. You pull it up towards your steering wheel, and that flashes your headlights. But remember, we said last day, make sure you use them sparingly, class. It's not things to do today. It's flashing headlights. Please don't like that particular type of action today from drivers. Turn signal lever, we mentioned here, of course, used to communicate your intentions, activates the turn signal lights and indicator lights. When the turn is completed, the lever will normally return automatically. Once in a while, probably once, that's when you straighten up your wheel, you've made your turn, and if your signal light still keeps flashing, just cancel it manually with your hand, because there's nothing more frustrating than driving on up the street with a signal light flashing to the right or left. And it's actually frustrating to some drivers. Remember last day we talked about road rage, aggressive driving. It could actually cause some people to, actually get angry with you, So make sure that and there's no need of flashing anyway. Once you've made your turn, make sure that your signal light is off, in other words. Lane change signal, raise the lever, you push it up for a right turn and pull it down toward the floor, pretty much, or your seat for a left turn. Headlight control, turn the outside part off the lever with the symbol on it to operate the lights. And most of those levers will have the little symbol there that tell you how to operate your lights for park lights and low beam and the high beam and that sort of thing there. So at the bottom of page 4 itself, they show you the controls in your instrument panel, the symbols there in the instrument panel. Lane change signal is B there, and the turn signal is B as well. And the headlight control all do the same job there. So the high beam dimmer switch is B there. And of course the flash to pass, the same lever, you use for your signal lights. The horn there, you can sound the horn by pressing the symbol on the steering wheel, the center of your steering wheel now, where the horn is located, as we said. On some English models in particular, the horn may be operated by the signal light lever. You actually put your hand on the signal light lever and push it in toward the steering wheel column itself to blow the horn. A lot of English cars have that feature. So again, class, works well, but not the same place and looks different to look at. So that's why they mentioned the cockpit drill there, of course. A warning device used to alert other road users of your presence. Again, the horn class uses sparingly, not these long, loud blasts that indicates anger or aggressiveness. And when you're approaching a bicycle, the answer, what to do, would be to honk to communicate your presence. And of course, we said, remember, move over in your lane a little bit to try and establish that margin of space between you and the bicycle, hopefully about a meter at least. So the horn can be used for several things there, for sure. If you want to make eye contact at an intersection somewhere, maybe sometime, just a quick toot, not a long loud blast, that's never required. Just a quick toot or two of your horn, just to get attention if you want. Do not overuse or abuse there, they tell us fast, and that's what they're saying. The horn can be abused and overused actually. The steering wheel, of course, is that component that's you're sitting behind when you're in the driver's seat. You know that, I would think. Controls the position of the front wheels. And they tell us there to avoid turning the steering wheel when the vehicle is stationary or not in motion, in other words, the dry steering they call it. And that's the thing about it, as particularly when we're angle parallel parking, we're doing a lot of turning of the steering wheel. Good morning. And of course, if the vehicle is stopped, then of course we're scuffing the tires from right to left or left to right, and that causes rapid wear to the underpart of the tire in that particular area. So when you go somewhere else, probably another store or parking lot somewhere, you do the same thing again. So eventually you're wearing your tires needlessly by that dry steering type of thing. Scuffing the tires from right to left or left to right without the vehicle's tires even rolling ever so slowly. So again, Tess, as I say, once you buy your own car and you have to buy your own tires, and when you're parking in particular, we're doing a lot of turning of the steering wheel. So make sure to have your car rolling ever so slowly, just to get away from that one particular position where you're turning the steering wheel and scuffing your tires there. So that's what they call stationary dry steering, class. Your car is stopped when you're turning the steering wheel, in other words. The airbag is located in the hub of the steering wheel, as we have mentioned. So the airbag readiness light, of course, will come on when you turn on the key, and all the lights in your instrument panel will light up. But once the engine starts 2 or 3 seconds, these lights should disappear again. If they appear when you're driving down the roadway, the airbag readiness light, you should have it checked, because it's your safety or the passenger in front. And if you've got a higher end vehicle, the airbags will be all around the roof and the seat and the doors. Some of those may not be functioning properly. So that light is a warning in any event, class, to have it checked, if it appears while you're driving along the roadway there. The windshield washer wiper switch there showing you at the bottom of page 5, and the different increments there, high, low, intermittent and off, and mist, depending on the weather conditions, of course. How hard is it raining, or is it just heavy fog or mist or whatever, will determine how fast you want your windshield wipers sweeping the windshield. They're used to clear the windshield. They tell us up at the top of page 5 to your upper right there. Turn the outside off the lever to positions off, intermittent or slow or fast. Intermittent would be optional. Not all cars may have an intermittent position on their windshield wiper switch, but in any event there'll be a slow and a medium high there for sure. Push in the end of the stock for washer fluid to clean the windshield. That's where your switch is located there to operate the little windshield washer pump that pumps the windshield wash up on your windshield. Install wiper blades when necessary. I'd say with a car, in most cases fast, you probably won't have trouble with the windshield wipers themselves. It usually wears out the car. I'm not saying it can't happen at all, but more often than not, you're going to have to replace your blades because they're exposed to the elements, rain, snow, sand, wind, the dust, the ice, and everything else. So they're going to wear fast. Maybe every year or every couple of years at least, you're going to put on winter windshield wiper blades on your vehicle because they take so much of a beating wintertime for sure. The ignition switch is there showing you on page 5 to your right there, halfway down the page approximately. You'll notice there's the import model and the American model there. They work fine, but yet they're a little bit different to look at. The on and start positions are the same, but you notice the off position on the American model is more up toward the top, whereas the import model is more down to the bottom part of the switch there. And the lock positions are in a little different location. And the accessory position is also in a little different location. You notice that? They do work fine, no doubt, but it's just that little bit different, not quite the same. So, again, the cockpit grill, that's very important. The ignition switch there, let's say, locks the position. The steering wheel is locked. Most electrical systems are inoperative. The off position, most electrical systems are inoperative. The steering is not locked. The accessory position, accessory electrical systems are operative. And if you want your radio on, for example, and don't want your engine running, you're waiting for someone or whatever on a hot day, you know, you wouldn't want your engine on, but you want to listen to the radio, for example, well, that your key would be in the accessory position on your ignition switch. The start position, of course, is spring-loaded, exert an extra pressure to turn the key to this position, and once the engine starts, after a couple of seconds or so, you just let go of the key and it flies back to the on position. It's spring-loaded there, and you don't have to worry about the key coming back to the on position. It'll do so itself there. If the engine is not operating, wait several seconds before restarting. Some vehicles require returning to the off position before restarting. And that not so much with our gas vehicles, but particularly with diesel engines, lots of times you have to turn on the key and there's a light in your dash called a glow plug light, and you have to wait maybe 30-40 seconds so that that glow plug out in your engine will warm the cylinders, and then of course you turn the key over on the start position and you hear your engine chugging over or cranking over and the engine will start. And typical of diesel engines, that would be there for sure. Comfort control, to control the temperature in the passenger compartment, to direct air at the windshield, the windows, and keep them clear, or you might want more heat down to your floor area, depending on the type of day that you're out and driving and how cold it is or whatever, and how much your windows is frosting up or fogging up. So it would depend on the temperature and the type of weather. Will determine which position you would have your comfort control level set at. The hazard switch, of course, again, a lot of cars will have them located near the heater switch, usually in the center part of your dashboard, if you want. But there are other models that may have them on the steering wheel column, whereby you've got to reach over the steering wheel or in through the steering wheel to turn on your four-way flashers. They both work fine, but just in different places. So, the rear window defogger activates the electric heat wires to clear the rear window. there's a grid on the back window that heats up. And of course, that switch is usually located near the heater switch, pretty much in the center part of your dashboard area there. At the bottom of the page 6 there, they talk about the accelerator pedal, or gas pedal if you want to call it, to your extreme right there on the bottom of page 6 is your gas pedal, we'll call it, or accelerator pedal, whatever you want to call it there. The next to it is the service brake, or the brake that you push on and apply pressure to stop or slow down your vehicle. The next component there is a clutch. That will be typical of a standard vehicle or a manual transmission, whereby you're pushing the clutch to disengage the engine from the transmission. That's what the clutch does, so that you can shift gears, and of course once you shift into the appropriate gear, for example, when you're starting off you would need first gear because that's where you need most power, and you would let the clutch out slowly once you've got it in gear and accelerate a little bit at the same time, and then you would find your car wanting to move away, move along. So, and that's the thing with driving a standard car class, is getting that coordination of letting out the clutch and giving your gas at the same time once you put the thing in gear. And that would take a little bit of practice for most people for sure. And it's not unusual for your engine to chug over and stall or cut out. You would have to go and start it again and try it again. And once you get that coordination, well then of course you could just talk to your passenger and shift it just as well as if it were an automatic. And once you're good enough at it, you wouldn't know the difference from an automatic to a standard if someone wasn't actually watching you. So that's the thing there. There's also a dead pedal showing you on page 6 to your extreme left, or footrest, and that's particularly used for cornering, where you want to rest or support your body when you're going around, particularly if you're going around a right curve or turn in the road, you're going to have a tendency to be thrown to the left. So that, or for any type of driving really, that footrest there, foot pedal, is a nice feature, and it's on a lot of vehicles for sure. Right above that there, you notice the parking brake, and that's the one you apply with your left foot. It's situated there by the driver's door, and then what it does, it locks the rear brakes on your vehicle, and of course it prevents your vehicle from rolling, particularly on a hill, if you're headed up or down an incline, a hill. So, and that plus you've got your vehicle in park, if it's an automatic, there's two things working there for you that's going to prevent the vehicle from rolling ahead or back on you. Some models will have a lot of models actually, most models I would think, would probably have the parking brake lever between the two front seats. And they show you a picture there of that on page 7, whereby the driver is applying the parking brake, and that's situated between the two front seats usually. It's a lever to pull up, and it locks the rear wheels only, the same as the one showing you that you had to push down with your foot. They both do a good job, but they're in different places and different to look at. So they're just hooked to the rear wheels there. It has nothing to do with the front brakes on your vehicle. On page 7 as well, up at the upper right corner of the page there, they show you the console of an automatic transmission, and you see a series of letters there and numbers, PRND21, and of course those are the positions that you move the selector lever in depending on what you have to do. If your car is stopped and parked and you're leaving it for a while, you will put it up over right the P position there, that lever. You notice that blue handle on the lever there. And then of course your car can't roll ahead or back on you because it's in park. The R is for reverse or backing up, reversing your vehicle. The N is neutral there, it's no gear. Your vehicle will start in neutral if you're asked, remember. The engine will actually start. But if you give her gas, the engine will just rev up or speed up faster, and your car won't move. It's because the transmission in the vehicle is not connected to the actual engine. That's in simple terms, that's what it's happening there. So, but it will start if you're asking neutral, and it certainly will start in park as well. So the D there is for drive. If you want to move ahead, when you want to move ahead, you put it in the D position. And 2 and 1 is gears that's lower gears that gives you more power. You will seldom ever have to use those tests with an automatic. You know, if you're towing a trailer through heavy snow or mud and not doing over 20 kilometers an hour, you might put it in 2 or 1 for that reason. But other than that, there's never any need of shifting your transmission. because it'll shift on its own, and that's why it's an automatic. You know, a lot of people some years ago that were used to driving standard vehicles, and when automatics became popular, they traded their car probably as standard and bought an automatic, and they figured they still had to shift gears in it. You know, when they come to a hill, they were shifted in two or one till they got up the hill, and then they would put it out again. A lot of people ruined their transmissions then, because older cars, once you put them in a certain gear, like 2 or 1, and took it out of drive and put it in 2 or 1, when they got up the hill, they forget to change. It couldn't get back out anymore. And 5,000 or 6,000 kilometers, their transmission was ruined. And they would come in the garage where I worked and say, you know, because I did one myself one time, I'll just take a second to tell you. So when it was repaired, the guy came up from downtown, and I was just about ready to road test it, and he wanted to go out with me. I said, sure, you know. He said, well, you mind if I drive? I said, no, I just want to see the shifting. Okay. So anyway, in Cornerbrook, when you go up Brookfield Avenue, you come to the highway, so he drove about 50 up there, and when he got to the highway, he had her in second. I said, well, I'm not missing it yet, he's only not me doing over 50. So when he got to the highway, of course, he had made the stop sign, headed towards Steveville and Port Avastet area. And when he started to pick up speed, 60 or 70, 80 miles an hour, then there was no kilometers with miles then, he still had the thing in second there, and the engine was screaming to be changed. And I said, sir, I said, you know, I said, you need your car and drive now. Oh, my son said, I forgot that. So, and that's what happened, Ted. Now, with today's cars, of course, that won't happen because the computer will know what we're doing wrong, and they'll correct it for us. It's like anti-lock brakes, you know. They're designed to correct driver errors that we'll talk about a bit later. So, in this case, today, newer cars, you wouldn't ruin your engine or transmission because the thing won't allow that to happen, right? So, the drive position class is when you want to move ahead. The reverse gear, of course, for backing up, you put it over right there. And the neutral is no connection to the drive wheels. The vehicle will roll on you free enough, and the engine will start. But it's no good to push on your accelerator. The engine will just speed up, but your car won't go anywhere really. So the D4 overdrive gear is just optional. Maybe electric on newer vehicles. Extra forward gear for cruising more economically above 70. And that would be for highway driving, of course, whereby you could put it in a gear that's higher than 5th or 6th gear even. Your engine wouldn't get as much wear, and it would be easier on gas. But in a lot of cases with four-cylinder engines, if you come to the least little hill, you would have to shift it back, you know. So that wouldn't be feasible there to use for sure, because it wouldn't actually mean that much to you. So what I'm saying, class, if it's put it in drive, and regardless if you're going uphill or downhill or on the level or highway driving or whatever, keep it in drive, and that's all you have to worry about, you know. So on page 8 there, of chapter 8, they show you a picture of driving a standard or manual transmission vehicle, and they show you the shift patterns there, and they're usually indicated on the steering wheel knob or the lever there if you want, how to shift. And of course, they would have a clutch, that particular type, that extra component, remember? So the gears are sort of in the form of an H shifting. The first one is a 3-speed transmission. They don't count reverse, just the forward gears. And you notice they're in the form of an H there, sort of. And the second picture is a 4-speed transmission, whereby you have an extra gear there. And of course, once you get on the highway, you can get it in 4th gear. Well, then of course you're saving a little wear on your engine, plus it's going to be a bit easier on fuel. And the third picture there is a 5-speed transmission, whereby you've got an extra cruising gear on that particular type of transmission, where it saves less wear yet on your engine, and of course you're burning less fuel. But again, you haven't got that much power. If you come too much of a hill, you're probably going to have to shift into a lower gear to get up there, because 5th gear, there's no power. The higher the gear, the less power we have. We can't have both of it with a gear train. 1st gear, lots of power for taking off, but not much speed. You wouldn't get much speed out of your vehicle. So that's why you have to shift the gears up through, depending on how fast you're moving. With a standard transmission, that is. So, and like I said, class, your instructor can tell you for a month what to do, if you're learning on a standard, but until you actually get that feel yourself, of shifting and letting out that clutch at the right speed and accelerating the right amount of fuel with your brake, with your gas pedal. It's something that you actually got to comprehend or get yourself. You've got to get that feel yourself. They'll tell you how to do it, but you know, you have to actually feel it yourself to be able to do a good job at shifting on a standard car or truck, whatever. They talk about comfort and convenience devices there on page 9 of chapter 8. And the tilt steering, of course, that's optional equipment, a nice feature. Some people may want their steering wheel straight up and down more, may want to push the head, leaning ahead toward the windshield more. Just depends on your comfort level. The air conditioning is optional. It's not on every vehicle, although a lot of vehicles have air conditioning, but it's not on every vehicle, so it's a nice feature summertime on a hot day when you're driving and you know, you don't want to have your windows down with the wind blowing through, so you know, air conditioning is a nice comfort on that particular type of driving and that particular vehicle. But like I'm saying, not all cars have that feature. Any car with air conditioning, and if you're using it, they're probably going to be a little bit harder on gas than a car that doesn't have air conditioning, because there's a compressor there and the engine is hooked with a belt to the engine, and of course the engine has to keep that compressor turning, so you're robbing a bit of power from your engine. So it's got to take more gas to feed it to compensate for that loss of having to turn the compressor. So a car, what I'm saying to us, will be slightly harder on fuel if you're using your air conditioning as opposed to a car that doesn't have air conditioning. Cruise control, you mentioned there, is a nice feature, particularly on, wouldn't be any good for around town, or the city or town we live in, because there's too much stop and go and traffic lights and traffic and stop signs and that sort of thing. We wouldn't be able to use it for any extended period of time at all. But on the highway, of course, on a day when there's not a lot of traffic, yes, cruise control might be a nice thing. You know, you could set your car at 95 or 100, whatever the speed limit. It was a clear day, dry pavement, not a lot of wind, light traffic, and you would just take your foot away from the accelerator. It'll maintain that speed uphill or downhill or on the level, and you just have to steer the vehicle. But I just wanted to caution you, Cass, about using cruise control if there's any water or rain, if it's raining or any water on the pavement, because the computer will think that the car needs more power because it's pushing water ahead of it, and it'll change the transmission's powertrain, and it could do some damage there to it. So not a good idea to actually use cruise control when it's raining or when there's any amount of water on the pavement. I just want to mention that there. The engine's immobilizer system there on the bottom of page 9 is a theft prevention system, one of many now available on modern vehicles. The engine will start only when the electronic code in the transponder chip located in the key corresponds to the registered ID code in your vehicle. In other words, it's programmed with the computer on your car, and it couldn't be hot wired or anything of that sort, because you know, it wouldn't be programmed with the computer. It's only in the chip in your ignition key that you own. So that's a nice theft prevention feature there for sure. Passenger airbag switch. Older cars had the feature whereby you could turn off the passenger airbag if there was no passenger in, you know. But the thing about it, if you picked up a passenger, you may forget to turn on their airbag switch again, and God forbid if they were involved in a collision, their airbag wouldn't operate. Could probably mean the difference of that particular person being killed or seriously injured as being actually saved. So newer cars today, I don't think that feature on any models is prevalent anymore. I think all airbags now in front are just automatically there, and they can't be turned off. Certainly not the one in the driver's position for sure, and not in the passenger position anymore. Electrical or lever controls there, power door locks. A lot of cars today have power windows and power door locks. You operate with a little switch, probably in the armrest, situated by the driver's side there. They can operate all windows and doors, so you know, that's a nice feature. Power seats, again, optional, not on all cars, whereby you can have your seat higher, low, hard or soft, whatever your comfort level might be. It's a really nice feature. But of course, those options make the car more expensive. But you know, what can you afford and what do you really want, I guess. And they say there, the driver in the second paragraph off the top of the page on your right there, page 10, the driver should never adjust the seat position while in motion class, and we mentioned that before. It's not the time to be setting your headrest or setting your seat when you're out driving on the roadway. You know, you know, you're distracted and you could probably cause you to be involved in a collision. A trunk release button or lever, which can be locked on some vehicles, allows the driver to open the trunk from the passenger compartment. And the interior hood release, in addition to protection against theft, opens the first latch and the hood security against the hood flying up. And of course, backup aids, that's been on cars now since 2015. All cars have backup aids. Before that, a lot of cars did have them, but not all vehicles before 2015, because you know, the federal government said, their engineers said, look, you know, in 2015, any car that's built and sold in Canada had to have a rear vision camera, whether it be a Volkswagen or a Honda or a Ford or Chevy or whatever the case may be. So, and it's a nice, it's certainly nice assisting parking class when you've got a rear vision camera, if you want to call it. It helps you can see the lines more clearly as opposed to a car that doesn't have a rear vision camera. But you can still back up and do a fairly good job, of course, you know, watch your mirrors or look behind through the back window, whatever the case might be. And when it comes to parking, your instructors will certainly well qualified and will give you all the details on how to park properly, angle and parallel parking. So you'll have nothing to worry about. Once they're finished with you, you will be quite comfortable with it. So that's the end of this chapter, class, when we talk about knowing your vehicle. And like I'm saying, every vehicle is not exactly alike. So if you get into another vehicle that you haven't driven before, take a minute or two to do the cockpit drill and just realize, is it like yours, or are there a few things different there? It could be that way, you know. So that's it for chapter 8 there.